Hi, Misha here, and recently I put out a pretty quick preview, or kind of initial review, of issue 19 in Eaglemoss's official collection of Battlestar Galactica diecast model ships. This collection is from the original series as well as remastered, and now they're starting to even get some blood and chrome, so it's pretty good. Originally we were going to have at least 12 issues, and we're already up to 19, with 20 coming out. By the way, 20 is to be the quote Heavy Raptor. Now this is the Heavy Raider, which was pretty prominent in the series, so it's one I've said since the beginning I hope they do. But what's a Heavy Raptor? The Battlestar Wiki doesn't really talk about it, and I'm not sure. I don't know how I feel about that. There's several other ships they could do that are all new, like the Demetrius or the Transitional Base Star. I don't know about doing another Raptor so soon, because we already have Boomer's Raptor from Season 1, Season 2. So let me know what you think. Well, how does the Heavy Raptor look? And is it one you're glad they're doing? But in this video, I thought I'd go a little more in depth with what scant information I can find out about this craft, and compare it with the standard Raider here, which was way back, issue 2. Although this was actually my first BSD ship. No, actually, no, I have to take that back. I think I did get the Viper Mark II first. It's hard to say. It's been a while. And we'll compare it with the original Raider from the series, and the Raider from Blood and Chrome, which is very much a traditional, kind of transitional type Raider. And I think there's something kind of interesting. The Heavy Raider, to me, is really the rightful successor to the TOS Raider. Let me explain. And this is just for fun, folks. And as usual, I'm blind, although I think this new camera may be helping me to get stuff on a little easier, but if I don't, sorry. I did my best. Anyway, it's always fun to talk about TOS, and this is one of the nicest models in the collection, too. This was the main Cylon craft. Of course, we only had one season of the original series, so there wasn't much time, and back then they were all practical models, so expensive. But while the Colonial Viper was a sleek dogfighter, I mean, held one person, it could hold two in a pinch with some variants. The Cylon Raider was more of a thumper. Yes, it could be used as a dogfighter, but it was more like a heavy fighter, like a P-61 Black Widow. And it was often used as an assault craft, dropship, and even transport. It had a crew of 3, and it seems like it could hold more. It had 2 triple-barrel cannons. In the original series, they're laser cannons. In the remastered, when we see this in flashbacks to the Cylon War, they're kinetic energy. But anyway. And it had internal wing bays for missiles and bombs. And again, it was seen delivering troops at least a handful of times. And size-wise, this is not a small ship. We don't know exactly, but estimates range between about 40 and 42 feet long and 50 and 52 feet wide because of the wingspan. So she was a big ship, fast, but didn't have the maneuverability of a Viper, and she could deliver a punch, and was maybe a little more versatile than a Viper. So let's just see. We were pretty good size, minimum crew of 3, missiles and internal bays, and 2 triple barrel guns. We don't know if they were FTL capable or not. Skipping over for a bit, going to the standard Raider from the new series. It is smaller. It's just over 29 feet long, including these long wing protrusions, meaning the main body is even less. It's about 19 feet wide. Now, it did not have a crew. It was bioorganic. It had basically an artificially grown organic animal brain. Although it did have an oxygen supply. Its primary weapons were 2 cannon, and they don't seem to be multi-barrel. They seem to be just regular cannon, although of a relatively large caliber. It also could carry missiles, either ship-to-ship, standard, or nuclear. And we do know that this was FTL capable. So right off the bat, you see that even though the models, this is a bigger model, in universe, this would have been a much bigger craft. And the blood and chrome here, we really know nothing about it because blood and chrome was unfortunately not successful. It was just a miniseries. But it seems to just be splitting the difference. And since the model here seems a little smaller, you could almost say this is where the original Raider started to be scaled down and started to become more of a dedicated dogfighter. So if they scale down the Raider from being a fighter, multi-role ship, assault ship, drop ship, if they scale it down with this as a transition to this as a dedicated fighter that's not really good for much else except that, what will be their assault ship? And thus the Heavy Raider comes into being. In universe, it seems like they deploy about 1 of these per every 10 standard Raider. And I could not find a size for this, but it would seem to be quite big. If you just compare the head here, assuming the heads are the same size, where the artificial brain would be, that means this is a very long and very thick, if also maybe narrow craft. So if the original is 40 feet and the new Raider is 29 feet, this is going to be pretty long, 50, 60 feet maybe. That's just total guess though. But this really does remind me of the original Raider because it too uses 2 triple barrel guns. These would be kinetic energy in the front. It also has 2 missile launchers in the front. And while it can pilot itself with its own brain, it can also be piloted by a Cylon Centurion, a humanoid Cylon, or even a humanoid human? Yeah. So it is definitely more versatile. She also has a carrying capability, roughly 10 Centurions, and since they're big, we could assume that it could carry a few more humanoid Cylons or humans. So it has more of the carrying capability of the original Raider and can be used more as a drop ship. And this really is more of a multi-role craft. While she can be used as a heavy fighter, they were mainly more used to kind of coordinate squadrons and assault either large capital ships like battlestars delivering nuclear weapons, or assault shipyards like the Scorpion Fleet Yards. Pay no attention to the meowing hobo. Or, of course, assault planets like we saw assaulting Caprica and the other colonies. These would originally come in, they might attack any survivors on the ground with their ordnance, and then they would land and deploy Centurions. And after the initial assault, they were seen carrying construction equipment, maybe carrying away broken debris, basically being used as freighters, cargo ships, transports, and we also see them being used to evacuate the colonies when the Cylons are pulling out. So again, they were used for lots of things. They were used as reconnaissance, scout, and patrol craft because they had a very long-ranged FTL drive, but I'm going to talk about that in a bit when I compare it with the Raptor. Suffice it to say, this is mostly a combat craft. Fighter, assault craft, and dropship. And that, to me, is more of what the original Raider was. What do you think? That's what Hobo thinks. And it's worth pointing out that Cylon base ships rely on their fighters more heavily than Colonial Battlestars. Battlestars have a lot of missiles, gun emplacements, turrets. While base ships have these, they mostly are just farriers for the Raiders, which means they're more like a traditional aircraft carrier, whereas a Battlestar Okay, interlude with Hobo is over. So, kind of compared the Heavy Raider to other Raiders. I do apologize if the information is scant, but there's just not a lot of data out there on the Battlestar Galactica ships. It's kind of odd. Anyway, comparing the Raider with the Raptor. These are very obvious similar craft in their respective fleets. It's worth pointing out that the Raptor here is a very tried and true vessel in the Colonial Fleet, having served from at least the latter stages of the First War. So she's been in service 40, 50, 60 years maybe, which isn't unheard of with aircraft in today's society, so that's fine. I mean, aircraft like the A-10 are getting on to be 40 years old, so yeah. But the Heavy Raider seems to be a relatively new vessel, not seen, as far as we know, in the original Cylon War, meaning it was developed sometime between, probably closer to the modern era, at least grown. Since these ships are grown more than just outright design, it's very possible that there are several stages of development. Yeah, we don't know how long she is, but 50, 60 feet maybe. And again, she can hold 10 Centurions, maybe 12 or 14 smaller people, especially if they're not kitted out. She has a very long-ranged FTL drive. Is primarily designed for combat. The Raptor is kind of the other side of the coin. She's pretty small and stubby. She's only about 28 feet long, so she'll comfortably fit on flight decks. She's quite thick though, quite tall. And she's maybe 18, 19 feet wide. She has a crew of 2. A pilot and an eco, an electronics communications officer. But she also has a large bay in the back that can carry up to 8 fully equipped Marines, or up to 10 people, civilians, or what have you. Her primary armament are two 20mm cannon. She does have 2 small internal bays and up to 8 external hardpoints. 4 under the wings, plus 2 wingtip rails for smaller things, and then 2 final hardpoints under the fuselage. She can carry missile pods or rocket pods, but really she's designed to carry drones, electronic jamming pods, and other support gear, because this isn't meant to go directly into combat if they can help it. It's used as an armed transport. It's used as a fleet support. But we also see it used very frequently as a search and rescue bird, SAR, as well as combat search and rescue. We see it used as a medical craft, even seeing Raptors in civilianized version as such, meaning that some of these don't have armament at all. So she definitely has more logistical fleet applications outside of direct combat, and that's not even really her main role. So while the Heavy Raider has better assault capabilities, the Raptor potentially has better reconnaissance, scouting, and just really can be used as a better multi-role craft. Now she does have FTL, of course, but it's a much shorter ranged FTL. Now it's not a limitation of the drive itself, it's the computing power behind it. Colonial ships don't have networked computers, so they can only compute so far for FTL jumps. Of course, Cylons don't have that limitation, far from it, being machines themselves. They have much greater computational power, so they can calculate longer jumps. In fact, we see in the series that when a Heavy Raider leads the way, that a Raptor can keep up quite handily. We also see Heavy Raiders towing Raptors in the final episode or final arc, meaning that it is a heavier ship if it's able to tow this one. So I think it's interesting that this is more of like an AWAC, electronic warfare, kind of like a Hawkeye in the Colonial Fleet, whereas this is more of a name your assault craft. You know, A6 Intruder or a A10 Warthog. I guess the maybe best analogy for these would be something like the Hind, where they can carry, but they also have a great bit of offensive capability and armor. And it definitely seems like a Heavy Raider can take more of a beating than a Raptor. But it also seems that Raptors are more useful. So yeah, I just thought it was worth comparing. Funnily enough, this here Raptor was actually piloted by a Cylon, if unknowingly. It's relatively large model, but it's pretty light. It's got a lot of polymer in it because of the detailing, whereas the Heavy Raider here, while sure it has a lot of polymer too for the detail bits, the center core of it is pretty chunky. Yeah, I mean, it's at least twice as heavy as the Raptor, which is kind of funny. And of course, it has 2 triple barrel cannon, whereas the Raptor just has 2 regular cannon. And while the Raptor can carry a wider range of devices, This one is very good at carrying missiles and bombs. And it can carry maybe slightly more personnel when used as a drop ship too. And unlike with the Raiders, the Colonials pretty much had space superiority fighters, the Viper Mark 1, 2, 3 through the 7. They never really combined them. Also, thinking about it, we have 4 Cylon ships here, and this one Raptor by itself. So yeah, that ship is pretty much fracked. Obviously, in universe, the Heavy Raider, we've talked about its role. For the series, it just gave the Cylons a different ship and one that could be a little more versatile for them. Although, interestingly, they never really built a set for it, at least an interior. I guess there just never really was a need. And it was in the series pretty much from the beginning and played a very major role. So I've got them all laid out here. I actually still think the TOS one is still the heaviest, which makes sense, being the one that was a practical model. It had less detailing, at least in the big way, so it's mostly metal. The lightest is definitely the blood and chrome. It's not to say it's the worst, it's quite nice, but yeah, the biggest is the original Raider we got here, which just makes sense. It's the kind of the big baddie ship from the series. But the Heavy Raider is heavier than I thought it would be. Lengthwise, it's about the same length as the Raider, the Model Wish. Of course, this is much wider, but it's also very thin. The Heavy Raider is the opposite. It's not especially wide, but it's very thick, which makes sense considering it would have the compartment for crew, passengers. I really like it. It's probably my second favorite after the TOS Raider. It takes me longer to warm up to the Cylon ships than it does the Colonials, but I think that's the case for most people. But you have to have the Cylon ships. You can't ignore them. And it seems like they really do put a lot of effort into them, and they tend to be more metal because they have kind of a smooth, organic hull going on. And that's about all I know, guys. I've dug and dug and dug looking for any info, and there's just not much out there on this vessel, which is a shame. But it's nice that we now have a total of, well, 5 if you count Scar, total of 5 Raiders in the collection. Right now we have 4 Vipers, and the next issue we'll have 2 Raptors. Again, let me know what you think of the quote-unquote Heavy Raptor, if it's really different or similar. And of course we have the 2 base stars, and we have 4 Battlestars. Yeah, 4 Battlestars. The one you notice I don't have is the Land Ram. I'm a ship collector. I may get it one day, but I don't collect tank models and truck models. I collect things that fly and things that go on the oceans. So for now, I didn't go for issue 18. Not to say it's bad. Not saying that at all. Just saying it didn't quite strike my fancy. But what do you think about the Land Ram? Should I pick it up? Let me know. With that, folks, I will let you go. As always, if you could, like, share, and subscribe. This is Misha. Catch you very soon. Next time.